everyone, and Kate back for the next in my Cinderella Chronicles series. I can't wait to tell you about the books that I read and the movies that I watched. Starting out the beginning of the year, I have so much energy for this project and exploring new avenues of it. So some fun Cinderella Chronicles content coming your way. A few things I have in the works, and I'm just continuing in addition to the sort of side Cinderella Chronicles projects that I'm doing. I'm continuing to just read more retellings and watch more films. So I will do the books first. Yes, I think I'll do the books first. And the first one, this is one that I read back in September, but I hadn't had enough Cinderella books that I read to tell you about it up until now. And that is The Making of a Marchioness by Frances Hodgson Burnett. This unfortunately was a miss for me, but I think that's because of me being several months out of it that I can say that. When I first finished it, I kind of thought, oh wow, all right, that was super exciting and edge of your seat and pacey. And then I had a book club discussion with it, and people pointed out kind of the weaknesses that were in it, and I thought, wow, that's really actually a lot. I don't feel quite as positive about it. In addition to that, I was totally oblivious to the fact that it is in fact 2 books. And of course, I can't remember the name of the 2 individual books. I'll put it on the bottom of the screen. And so you can see those. And the first book, which is more the Cinderella element, where, this woman who is a servant, and then this dashing man, this dashing debonair gentleman sees her and just falls for her immediately. And they get married. That's the first book. And then in the second book, it feels like a completely, they are not related at all. It's very much plot heavy and twisty turny, and kind of you're really worried for the safety of a certain character. And so it was very jarring to have such 2 different feels to the story. And in addition to that, and this is, I think, unfortunately, Frances Hodgson Burnett is just not the author for me, because we know how, frustrated I was coming out of the end of The Secret Garden. And then in A Little Princess, Sarah Crewe to me is just the most saccharine, she's so perfect, has no flaws, and only wants to be friends with people that she pities. It just really just did not strike the right tone for me. And now I have this where I felt like in The Making of a Marchioness and the 2 books, it's an author's job to make you feel for characters. Whether you feel disgust, whether you feel love, compassion, whatever you feel, you're supposed to feel things for the characters. And it's not like I have to read a book where I love everyone, because, Wuthering Heights is one of my favorite books. And Gone with the Wind has some really, really controversial characters in it, but I still love that book because it makes me feel things deeply. And then, of course, I love a book where I love the characters. This, I felt nothing for these characters. I didn't feel invested in them whatsoever. It just, I didn't know. I thought the Cinderella character in particular was kind of, there's this pitfall of Cinderella where she has no depth to her character. She's just sweet and nice. And that's what this character, and she felt kind of pitiful, to be honest. And it was very much like the prince comes to swoop in and save her, and she has done nothing for herself to try to be resilient or to, she's very hardworking. I will say that about her. She is very hardworking, but I just didn't really have many feelings for her. I didn't feel compelled or drawn to her as a character. It just didn't draw me in. So several months out now, it was a big disappointment. Right afterwards, because of the really intense and suspenseful plot of the second one, it felt very much like a sensation novel. I thought, oh, I really like that. But once, the high came down, I was thinking about it compared with, Mary Elizabeth Braddon's books. And Mary Elizabeth Braddon, I think, deserves so much more praise as a Victorian author, because she does have those sensational plots, but she has a lot of depth to her characters. And that's why they are just this beautiful marriage of plot and characterization. And I did not get that from The Making of a Marchioness. So then in a very different vein, and one that was, I would put it in the category of cute, was Geekerella. I really enjoyed this. And now I will tell you that this had a lot going up against it. 1, I don't read a lot of YA. 2, I don't read a lot of YA contemporary. And 3, I really, the whole TV fandoms culture overwhelms me and it puts me off watching shows. Like well, for a lot of reasons, I don't watch Game of Thrones. I tried Sherlock, and Sherlock and I are not meant to be. Poldark, like a lot of the super popular ones, Outlander, Doctor Who, all of those, just TV fandoms, just like I don't know, it's like the zealousness of the fans, I just feel overwhelming, and then I'm like, it's just not for me. Kind of it's this weird thing I have. So anyhow, it had all of that going against it, and I still gave this 4 stars. So Geekerella is about 2 characters, and the one is, of course, her name escapes me, so I'll put it down there too. Lots of forgetting things this video. But she writes a fan blog for this show that's supposed to be kind of like Battlestar Galactica meets Star Trek, and there are many, many loyal fans. So she has this blog that she writes for, and just any thoughts she has on episodes. It was not airing during her childhood. She was watching it when reruns were on, and her dad loved this show so much, and he loved it so much that he started a whole convention in honor of this show. And the convention has now just really taken on a life of its own. It's a really huge thing for all the fans that know and love the show. And this starts out right when there is going to be a new Elle, that's her name, duh, because it's a Cinderella retelling. So her name is Elle. And the book kicks off when there is going to be a new big film coming out of part of this show. You know, a film that's an extension of the show. And the male lead, his first name is Damien, is really famous for being in this sort of like smutty soap opera. And so fans are all up in arms when he's going to be in it. And through an interesting set of circumstances, Elle and Damien start texting each other, and they don't realize who they're texting. And they slowly fall in love over the time of texting. It was fun because this was set in Savannah, Georgia. And so you don't see a lot of books that are set in the South. And so I thought that was a cool setting for it. And especially for the really vain, superficial stepmother and stepsisters, for them to have this, respectable appearance, the sort of Southern thing was a good fit for that. Obviously, I don't think it's wrong to have, a respectable appearance, but the fact that they value having a respectable appearance over everything else, and that character does not matter, is, fitting for the stepsisters. So it was a good setup for them. And what I also love is that she works in a food truck that looks like a pumpkin. So lots of little themey things in there that I thought were just really good fits. I think sometimes, when you try to be creative with a Cinderella retelling, it can kind of fall flat, but I loved all the creative choices that Ashley Poston made for this. And it just was very cute. I'm not, definitely not a teenager anymore, but I found myself really just kind of emotional at the conclusion of the romance. It seemed really sweet, and I was touched by it. So yes, like I said, the fact that it got 4 stars is pretty much a 5-star for a YA book. I don't know if I have given any YA books 5 stars, maybe the Lunar Chronicles. So yes, that speaks volumes about how much that I liked the book. Okay. Then, and this I have a copy of because I bought a copy of this. That is how much I liked it. And that is Shard of Glass by Emily Deady. Now, a couple of you recommended this to me on Instagram and said, this is a really good retelling. It was not on any of the lists. Like Goodreads has several Cinderella retellings lists. Book Riot has a list out there, and I've just looked up as many lists as I can, and this was not on the list. But maybe did it come out in 2020? Maybe that's part of the reason I did. Yeah, 2020. So this is a new Cinderella retelling. So I just love that people are still writing retellings, because this was excellent. This was definitely a very much traditional fairy tale feel to it. But it is about Ashlyn. And what I liked in this one is that she goes from riches to rags, and then by the end she's to riches again. So that cycle I just find so fascinating and interesting to see a character go through all that. And you are just meeting her when she has fallen to rags. Her father died at sea, and so she is left with her stepmother and one stepsister in this case. And the stepmother was I mean, the passive aggressiveness of the stepmother, she was so skilled at it. I mean, the finesse that she had for inflicting guilt but making it seem like she was being kind, like Mother Gothel in Tangled, was spot on. You just hear these conversations that she has with Ashlyn, and you're just like face palming because it's like, do you see all of the guilt that she's putting on you for things that are not your fault whatsoever? Another aspect that I enjoyed about this, as someone who enjoys handicraft herself, was getting to hear the passages where she gets to sew different things. And this all ends up falling into place when their family is really like, they might starve in the winter. And it's cool because in this fantasy world, there were different names for the seasons. And so I can't, of course, remember the names of the seasons off the top of my head. But so it's going to be very cold soon, and so she ends up getting a job as a maid at the palace. Right before she does, she takes in these two strangers to her house because they have been out in the rain, and it ends up being the prince and his brother. Prince Anric is the name of the prince who is going to be our leading man, and she doesn't know he's the prince, and so he finds it incredibly refreshing when she's giving him shelter and she gives him some food, and the warm stable to stay in. That she's talking to him like she would any other person and not the prince, because she doesn't know it's the prince, and he finds that incredibly refreshing. And so then he just finds ways to end up wherever she is in the palace when she's working there as a maid. They're going to have a very big ball coming up, and there is an old tapestry that Ashlyn and Anric find in a storage, and Ashlyn is a very talented seamstress, and so she starts working on the tapestry. There's also some magic involved in this, and I really love the fairy godmother character. She is a seamstress herself, and so has a tailoring shop, and Ashlyn comes in there from time to time. It was just a really, really good, solid fairy tale retelling. It has characterization. It has a good overarching plot. It has you really what do I want to say? Really rooting for these characters. It also has the otherworldly fairy tale elements. It has some dark elements to it, which I really liked that. And it was a really quick read. It is not even 275 pages, so it is a shorter one. And it looks like this is the first in a series, and the next one is a retelling of Beauty and the Beast. Yes. So I am not huge on Beauty and the Beast retellings, but I would be curious from this author to see her take on it. So I'm very, very glad. Thank you to anyone who recommended this retelling to me because it was excellent. All right, on to the movies. The first one was a very mediocre children's movie, so I won't say much about it, but it is Leap. This was loosely in the Cinderella category, as in I was looking around on Amazon Prime one day and Leap showed up. And so I was like, I will watch it. And I watched it with the boys, and that's the only reason I watched the entire thing. It is about our main character, whose name will go down there. Too many names, can't keep track of them all. And she wants to go to Paris to dance in the ballet academy. It is her big dream. She lives in an orphanage, and she has a best guy friend, and so they run away to Paris. And the Cinderella tie was that she steals someone else's acceptance letter to get into this academy, and ends up, she has her fairy godmother character as someone who used to do ballet, and then she got a big leg injury. So I would be interested to hear, other people kind of on the commentary on like, look how sad she is now that she got a leg injury. Her life is in shambles, but she does love this character, and so they form this bond, and it's sweet to see her train her in ballet and how to do ballet. And then this woman who's the fairy godmother character, she then has a boss who's the wicked stepmother character, and the wicked stepmother character has a daughter who is awful to our Cinderella character and really just tries to sabotage her life. And so it was, my issue was with it was this. One, it did have, I will say, before, the negative, it had stunningly beautiful animation. I really liked that about it. It was very, very pretty, but it had too many modern pop songs in it. It was just too much. If you're going to make a period film, this is supposed to be set in the Victorian era. The Eiffel Tower is currently being constructed. Don't put so many pop numbers in this. That's what you put in modern movies. And also, I just can't deal with modern phrases being tossed in there. Like they talk about the characters are having a dance-off. Like, they wouldn't have a dance-off in the Victorian era. And also, the stepmother at one point she's trying to get the Cinderella character. There's a rooftop battle, and she has a hammer, and she says, it's hammer time. And it was just too OTT. Just, I can't, no, it was too much. So I don't like that modern lingo being thrown in. No. Okay, moving on. Then, strangest film maybe I've ever seen is More Than a Miracle with Sophia Loren and Omar Sharif. And good grief, was this prince awful. The first time he meets our Cinderella character, he shoves her as hard as he can to the ground. And they interact, they fight over a horse that he says she's stolen and she says she hasn't. And then before that, he had like gone to a monastery and monks gave him a dough mixture and said, get someone to make you 7 dumplings out of these, and if they do, then you'll know that's the woman you're supposed to be with. And she makes him dumplings, but she eats one of them and then hands him 6 dumplings. And then as a protest, because she didn't make him 7, he lays on the ground, and then the townspeople find him, and she's like, they're going to bury you alive because the soldiers might find you, and they'll get accused of killing you. And he sticks to his principles, and he's willing to be buried alive because she didn't make him 7 dumplings. And then she realizes that she loves him, even though he shoved her over, and they fought the whole time they interacted. And she goes to see some witches, and they say you have to lick a keyhole to raise him from the dead. So she licks a keyhole, but then he's paralyzed. And then he decides he does want to marry her, but she has to enter a contest against 6 other princesses in a dishwashing contest, because that will show who is the most suitable wife, a dishwashing contest. She loses the dishwashing contest, and in front of everyone else, he walks up to her and he slaps her across the face. She runs out of the castle in tears and goes and swims in the ocean. And at that point, which some flying monks, you did not mishear me, they're spiraling around in the sky and they say, Isabella, go back to him, you love him, and then swirl back to their monastery. So then she goes back and she tells him how his bride that he has just married sabotaged her contest by using her diamond ring to cut the plates in half. And so then he annuls his marriage and they end up together. Weird. Strange film. Not a favorite at all. I watched, it was an hour and a half, and I probably watched an hour total because I was just kept skipping around. It was a painful process. All right, moving on. Never again. That's all I have to say. I watched the 2 Sabrinas. This video is getting long, so I'm going to keep this brief. The Audrey Hepburn Sabrina, the thing that I loved about it was Audrey. I mean, she's great. She's great. And I thought she was better than the 90s Sabrina character. So that was what was the shining element to me. And I kind of knew going in that Audrey was going to be my favorite thing about this movie. But Humphrey Bogart as a romantic lead he doesn't really grab you. And when he smiles, it looks like it's like painful for him to smile. So it's very charming and cozy. But if we're going for overall, like, just better fit of plot, better casting, the 90s Sabrina definitely won. I really am nostalgic about 90s romantic comedies or romantic dramas. I really, really feel comfortable in them. I like them. Greg Kinnear as David was, I have a crush on Greg Kinnear, okay? Let's just be honest. And he worked so well as David. But then you have Harrison Ford as Linus, which the name Linus, I feel like doesn't really inspire lots of romantic feelings. So he's got that going against him. But it's a really charming story, and I think it fits the Cinderella mold because she's, this poor girl, poor servant class, and then she really gets some sophistication and je ne sais quoi when she goes off to Paris. In the old one, it's for cooking school, and in the newer one, she does fashion photography. And it's a really just fun, cozy story. It's not one of my favorite, romantic movies that I've seen because I just find the character of Sabrina, it's kind of like her character is just in relation to the men in the story. I don't really feel like we get to know her. It's either she's really pining away for David or she realizes that she loves Linus. There's no, who is Sabrina actually? I feel like we don't get into her head and really get a sense of that. So definitely my favorite out of the two Sabrinas, and Leap and More Than a Miracle was the 90s Sabrina, definitely. So thank you if you have stuck with me this long with the Cinderella Chronicles project. I've now made a playlist for those that are interested in investigating the backlog. So I will be back for another video soon and more Cinderella Chronicles this year. Yes, I'm excited to keep this project going because it's definitely something I am excited about. So I will be back for another video soon, and thank you for watching. Bye.